My sister looked at my 8-year-old daughter standing at the edge of her backyard pool in Charlotte, North Carolina, holding an empty plate, and told her, in front of 11 other relatives, "Clean the pool before you can eat, Wynnie. Skimmers by the shed." My name is Harlow Bishop, 36 years old, and I want to describe exactly what I watched happen in the next 30 seconds, because I think the specific details matter considerably more than any summary could. My daughter Wynnie looked around at her 3 cousins, my sister Georgette's children, already sitting at the patio table with full plates of food, already halfway through eating, while she stood there in a damp swimsuit holding nothing but an empty plate and a clear, unmistakable instruction that she alone, among all the children present, needed to complete a chore before she'd be allowed to eat. I want to be honest that I didn't hesitate the way I have in other difficult family moments, waiting to gather information before responding. I crossed that yard immediately, took the plate gently from Wynnie's hands, and looked directly at my sister. "She's 8 years old, Georgette. She's not doing pool maintenance before lunch. It's a simple chore," Georgette said, with the same casual, unbothered tone she might have used to comment on the weather. "Kids should learn responsibility. It's not like I'm asking her to do anything unreasonable." "You didn't ask your own kids to do it," I said, gesturing toward her 3 children, still eating at the table, entirely unbothered by the exchange happening a few feet away. "You asked mine. That's not a lesson about responsibility. That's something else entirely." I want to be honest about how uncomfortable that confrontation felt, happening in front of our parents and several aunts and uncles, all of whom went quiet in the particular, careful way families do, when a conflict surfaces that everyone present has apparently been avoiding acknowledging for considerably longer than this one specific afternoon. It was my Aunt Priscilla, standing near the drink table, who finally spoke into that uncomfortable silence. "Harlow, I don't think this is the first time. I've noticed it at the last few gatherings, too. Wynnie's always the one clearing plates, or watering Georgette's garden beds, or helping set up chairs while the other kids play. I assumed maybe you two had some kind of arrangement I didn't understand." I want to describe the specific, sinking feeling that comment generated, understanding in that moment that what I just witnessed wasn't an isolated, thoughtless comment, but potentially part of a pattern I hadn't fully noticed myself. Distracted, I realized with some shame, by my own divorce and the demanding new job that had occupied most of my attention over the previous year, limiting how closely I'd been paying attention during family gatherings. I'd often arrived at already exhausted. I took Wynnie home early that day, and over dinner that evening, gently, carefully, asked her directly whether this had happened before. "It happens most times we go to Aunt Georgette's," she told me, with the particular matter-of-fact acceptance children sometimes develop around patterns they've quietly absorbed as simply the way things are. "I don't really mind, Mom. I like helping. I just get really hungry sometimes waiting." I want to be honest about how that answer devastated me considerably more than the pool comment itself had, understanding that my daughter had quietly normalized a pattern of unequal treatment, specifically, because no one, myself included, had stepped in clearly enough, consistently enough, to help her understand that what was happening to her wasn't actually normal or fair. I spent the following week gathering information, not out of any calculated strategy, but out of a genuine need to understand exactly how extensive this pattern actually was. I called my mother, my Aunt Priscilla, and my cousin Odalise, each of whom, once I asked directly, confirmed observations they'd apparently each individually noticed without ever comparing notes with each other or with me. Wynnie clearing dishes at a 4th of July gathering, while her cousins played in the sprinkler. Wynnie weeding a garden bed at an Easter gathering, while the other children hunted for eggs. Wynnie setting up folding chairs at a Labor Day barbecue while her cousins swam. I want to be careful here, because I don't think any single instance, viewed in isolation, would have seemed as clearly troubling as the full pattern did, once I finally had all of it laid out together across nearly 18 months of family gatherings. I called Georgette directly, calmer than I'd managed during the actual pool confrontation, and asked her honestly why she seemed to consistently expect labor and responsibility from Wynnie specifically, in ways she never asked of her own 3 children. The silence on the phone lasted long enough that I understood, even before she answered, that some part of my sister already recognized the pattern once it was named directly rather than absorbed as a series of individually unremarkable moments. "I don't know," Georgette finally said, her voice considerably smaller than the confident tone she'd used at the pool. "I think, if I'm being honest, some part of me has always resented that Mom and Dad helped you and Desmond with a down payment on your house 6 years ago, when Marcus and I never got that same help when we bought ours. I think I've been taking that resentment out on Wynnie without ever fully admitting to myself that's what I was doing. I want to be honest about the complicated mixture of anger and unexpected understanding I felt hearing that explanation, recognizing a family financial history I remembered clearly. Our parents had, in fact, provided Desmond and me with a modest down payment gift years earlier, a decision that had, apparently, generated a quiet resentment in my sister that had never been directly addressed by either of us, allowed instead to fester into a pattern that had devastatingly ended up directed at an 8-year-old who had absolutely nothing to do with any of it. I brought this entire situation to a family meeting 2 weeks later, not out of any desire for public confrontation, but because I understood, having spoken with Priscilla and Odalise and my mother, that Georgette's pattern with Wynnie had been quietly visible to multiple family members for well over a year, and I believed the full family needed to understand what had actually been happening, rather than allowing it to continue as a series of individually dismissed, unaddressed incidents. That meeting, held at my parents' house, involved considerably more emotional honesty than any family gathering I could previously remember. Georgette, confronted directly with nearly 18 months of documented instances from multiple family members, moved through genuine, visible shame in a way that felt considerably more honest than any simple, defensive denial might have. "I need to apologize to Wynnie specifically," she said. "And I need to apologize to you too, Harlow, for letting old resentment about something that happened between adults get taken out on a child who never did anything to deserve it. I want to describe what happened over the following months, because I think it matters considerably more than the initial confrontation itself." Georgette requested, and I agreed to, a series of careful, deliberate visits specifically focused on rebuilding a genuine relationship with Wynnie, free of any expectation of chores or labor. Visits that started slowly and awkwardly before gradually becoming something considerably warmer. She also did something I hadn't expected at all, 6 weeks after that family meeting. She organized an entire pool party specifically for Wynnie, inviting Wynnie's own friends from school rather than simply the extended family, hearing an actual pool cleaning service for the event rather than relying on any child's labor, and spending the entire afternoon focused specifically on making sure Wynnie experienced exactly the kind of carefree, celebrated childhood afternoon she'd been quietly denied at so many previous gatherings. I watched my daughter that afternoon, floating on an inflatable raft, laughing with her friends, eating whenever she wanted without any chore standing between her and a plate of food, and I felt something considerably more complicated than simple relief. A quiet, ongoing vigilance about making sure I never again allowed distraction or exhaustion to keep me from noticing a pattern this significant happening to my own child. Georgette and I talk more honestly now than we have in years, working through not just what happened with Wynnie, but the deeper, older resentment about the down payment that had apparently been quietly shaping her behavior for considerably longer than either of us had previously acknowledged. We haven't resolved every complicated feeling between us, and I want to be honest that I don't think either of us expects perfect resolution from a handful of difficult conversations. But Wynnie, when I asked her recently, months after that original pool incident, what she remembered most about the whole situation, told me something that I think captures exactly what actually mattered most about how this story resolved. "I remember the pool party Aunt Georgette threw me," she said. "Not the other part as much anymore. I think the pool party kind of made the bad part smaller. I think, often, about how close that entire pattern came to simply continuing indefinitely, absorbed quietly by an 8-year-old who genuinely believed clearing plates and weeding gardens, while her cousins played, was simply, unremarkably, the way things were. I think about how many family members had individually noticed something troubling without ever comparing notes, allowing a genuine pattern of unfair treatment to hide in plain sight simply because no single instance, viewed alone, seemed significant enough to name directly. Wynnie doesn't clean pools before she eats anymore, at any family gathering, under any circumstances. That specific, small, previously unremarkable rule matters to me now more than I think I can fully explain. A quiet, permanent boundary built out of a summer afternoon that started with an empty plate and ended with an entire family finally learning to see clearly what had been happening directly in front of them all along.